Reading 75 from the Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Dr. Maurice Nicoll. Quaramid, Ugle, May 13, 1945. Commentary on Emotional Center. Tonight, let us try to speak about the emotional center. The work teaches that the most difficult center to control is the emotional center. In so many words, it says that the formatory center, that is, the mechanical division of the intellectual center, can, to some extent, be controlled, and also the moving center, which controls all our movements. Mr. O once said that the emotional center was like a mad elephant, and that in India, when an elephant in service went mad, it was necessary to find two sane elephants and put them on either side of the mad elephant with ropes, so as to teach him right behavior. Let us think what this means. Thoughts can, after a time, be controlled voluntarily to some extent. Also, movements, such as looking sulky, which is a muscular manifestation of the face, can be controlled to a small extent voluntarily. But the emotional center is involuntary, that is beyond one's direct control. Let us take only the voluntary, moving center. You can control it, can you not? You can walk faster or slower. You can smile or frown. This is due to the contraction and relaxation of muscles. The moving center presides over muscles. That is easy to understand. I can extend my arm or not. I can put my tongue out or not. That means that I have direct control over the muscles that subserve these movements. But can I control in the same way my emotions, my feelings of dislike or liking? You will agree that this center, which is the most important center of all, is not directly under our control. So it is called the mad elephant and has to be controlled at first by the two other elephants. The intellectual center, which thinks, and the moving center, which acts. Let us take the example of finding oneself with a negative emotion towards someone, and let us suppose that one's aim at the moment is not to manifest, not to show, not to consent entirely to this negative feeling, say, of strong dislike. It is possible in such a case to observe the intellectual center, the thoughts that cluster and wish to gain consent at that moment, and not go with them. It is also possible to relax the muscles and not get worked up muscularly, frown, and hold oneself in a certain antagonistic posture, speak with a certain harshness, and so on. This can control at least the external expression of the negative state of emotional center. Of course, if you really believe in your negative emotions and are doing all this in, so to speak, a social way, the result is negligible. The merit goes into your personality. You become a kind of fox. I mean, you become a very insincere person. But if you have come to the point of disliking your mechanical disliking having your inner chemistry made negative, in fact, hating being negative and understanding what it means to be negative, how, for example, it always means that you have no psychological courage, no idea of what is necessary from the work point of view, no inner battle, no inner strength. In short, unless you see you have always lost the work battle if you become identified and negative and believe you are right, then you do not yet understand how the work shifts the battle area into yourself and looks eventually only at that side, this inner side, or if you like, this psychological side. The psychological side is the man himself, the woman herself. You may treat a person outside you well. Yes, but how do you treat the person internally, in your psychological world, this invisible world known only to yourself? after a time in the work, if it begins to act on you, you feel far more uncomfortable through wrong feeling than through anything you may have done outwardly. The work is not mainly about outer life, but about inner life. And here, sincerity and valuation are necessary. Not pious, not artificial, but genuine. You can feel a fool for having behaved wrongly externally, but you must begin to feel worse than a fool if you have silently, in the privacy of your inner psychological life, your real life, treated a person in a mean and miserable way in your thoughts and feelings, though no one knows it. So it has often been said to you that it is how we treat people internally, invisibly, in mind and feeling that counts. The commandment, "Thou shalt not murder," means esoterically in one's inner life. It has a psychological meaning apart from a literal one. I fancy that some of you now know what I mean and what inner wretchedness can arise when one speaks to oneself negative things about others and enjoys them, and then plasters up one's face and appears externally as an angel. The inner and the outer must correspond. This is a long task. They must, like two clocks, keep the same time. Now, all this can be very easily misunderstood and taken in a wrong way. So I will remind you again that the point is that if you are in a negative state, it is always your own fault from the work point of view. No matter what happened, what someone said, what someone did, we have to become responsible for our negative states ourselves. You over there must become responsible to yourself. Of course, if you secretly love being negative and indulging in unpleasant emotions, then I can only say that whatever else you indulge in secretly, this is the worst thing of all. For example, if you are a mischief maker and enjoy the results, then you are pretty low down in level of being. I will remind you of the first step, namely, we are not asked to like, but to stop dislike and all its ramifications. This makes a very practical starting point. Later, when you feel the presence of negative emotion in you as a foreign substance, as acutely as a stomachache, then you will seek for your own reasons to work on yourself and transform your inner state for your own inner health. Then you will find it necessary to know and seek to understand all the work teaches and not merely give it a casual, occasional glance, as if it were a thing you could pick up and cast aside just as you like in a trivial way. The work must become real, but this takes many years and requires a certain inner courage and inner bravery and inner determination until something new is born distinct from life. This is called a point in the work, and this point begins the new development of which the work speaks when it is said that a woman is created as a self-developing organism. This development is psychological, not physical. Now let us speak about emotions, about feelings. What are they? Dislike is a feeling, an emotion. Does it unite us with the person or the reverse? Can you understand another person through dislike? This is a simple question enough, but have you considered it? Now, you may dislike certain eyes in a person, and provided you dislike certain eyes in yourself also, it does not mean that you cannot connect yourself with that person, for you may like other eyes in that person. But if you dislike a person wholly, no contact is possible. I think some of you do not yet realize this, and I fancy that this is because you have not yet observed different eyes in yourself, not yet seen that you are many people and not one person. Unless you can break yourself up into many, you cannot see many in others. If you are complacent and asleep enough to take yourself as being all right, as being one permanent person, how can you escape from either wholesale liking or wholesale disliking? That is, how can you escape from the pendulum of yes or no in all your human relations? You probably all share with me the tendency, when we are to meet someone and have been told beforehand that he or she is an unpleasant so-and-so, to accept this withering statement too easily. Of course, this is not the sign of a person in the work, to take people at the estimated popular value. Even before I met the work, I did not accept labels. As a result, I often found myself liking people everyone else disliked, and disliking people everyone else liked. I do not think this was sheer contrariness, a sheer love of contradicting. Is it not true that we are very easily open to suggestion, very easily even hypnotized? A weak person is easily persuaded and accepts the general prevailing standards. This means there is little that is essential, that is real in his feelings. Standardized feelings, being told and accepting what it is right to feel in the way of liking and disliking, etc., appears to me a terrible disease, such as we have prevalent at present, that attacks the individuality. But when we come under the healing influences of the work and learn all that it teaches, we no longer see people in any standardized way, provided we no longer take ourselves in a standardized way. Now, people have patterns of feeling, standardized ways of taking everything that their built-up personality has acquired. They keep on behaving according to this pattern and never observe it. So they remain in the prison of what they imagine is excellent. I am sure that in such cases, if such people were to observe themselves in the light of the work and what it tells us to do and what not to go with, things would change completely for them. They would feel another set of influences. But how many people who regard themselves as being in the work ever observe themselves from what the work tells them to observe? Why is this so? It is because the feelings are not yet developed. Now, there are two directions in which the feelings can develop. Affections can develop. That is an outward direction, into life, into objects. There is an outward direction, always at the expense of self-love. What does this mean? When we feel, for example, that we cannot do in the right way, and as it were, ask the work how to do, we develop the inner direction of the feelings. This inner direction changes the feelings we have of ourselves. It is the halfway to higher centers, the other side in us. So we have to regard what the work says about divisions of centers. What is a sign that we are in a higher division of a center? One sign is that there is always a change in the feeling of I. Another sign is that we can control a lower emotion. Direct emotional control is only possible through one emotion being stronger than another. All emotions belonging to higher divisions of the emotional center have the power of controlling lower emotions. The difficulty is to get into higher divisions of the centers. For this, we must discover methods, knowing how the case is. Let us take a small division in the emotional center. The small divisions 1, 2, and 3 are the moving, the emotional, and the intellectual divisions of the moving, or the most mechanical part of the emotional center. 1 is the part connected with the expression of ordinary emotions. In 2 lie all our ordinary personal likes and dislikes, and here is the center of our self-love. 3 is will, as the resultant of many small interests and desires. This is not real will, which belongs to the highest division. What emotion can control the emotions arising in 2 when the court of self-love holds sway? Only emotions belonging to the large main divisions 2 and 3. By what can the large division 2 be characterized? By emotions going beyond oneself, by the feeling of the presence of what is greater than oneself, by genuine religious and aesthetic emotions. The quality of these emotions is quite different from that of the lower emotions and can control them. In the big main division 3 lie emotions that control all the center. These emotions can create, through which a man can begin to have real will. But unless this is accompanied by an equal development of consciousness, which is the highest quality of the intellectual center, the will is not full will. Now, how comes it about that we cannot contact these higher divisions? The reason why we cannot contact these higher divisions is that we are always in small moving parts of each center, in petty, petulant, small likes and dislikes, thoughts, etc. In regard to the emotional center, we are always preoccupied with our personal likes and dislikes, and so with all the manifestations of our self-love.